Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome to the first ever episode of Hockey Debates. We have three of my favorite creators, three of my day ones, and basically on the show, we're going to be debating a bunch of topics. I'm going to be the judge, jury, and executioner. We're going to have four different questions that are basically open-ended that you can choose a bunch out of. They're going to choose one person's going to choose first, then second, then third. It's going to rotate around. At the end of the four questions, whoever has the most points advances. If there's a tie for second, there's going to be a sudden death question. And then we're going to have a 3-question final round. I am joined again by three of my favorite content creators, three of my TikTok day ones back in 2021. Up first, Marcus Antonelli or Marcuzzi. How are we doing?
Doing good. Ready to have some fun and talk with y'all.
This is not about fun. This is about absolute hockey debate.
Come
warfare.
on.
Next up, we got Max. Max Mainville, how we doing?
We're doing great. Unlike Marcus, I'm going to win.
Hell yeah. Bring that freaking fire. I don't want these guys are all buddy in the lobby before I said about war.
I don't like you guys.
And then lastly, we got Nordic. How we doing?
Hey,
Nordic?
how's it going? I'm heavily outnumbered by Bruins fans right now, so hopefully this doesn't turn against me, but hopefully everyone's doing well. It's almost Friday, at least.
Yeah, we're recording this Thursday night. I have no clue when I'm going to drop it, but thank you if you're watching.
All right.
If you're watching. But we have our first question. They're basically going to get like 30 seconds of an opening statement, so it's going to be 5 minutes per round, 1:30 of opening statements. Then they're just going to go to war. I'm going to moderate and then make an unbiased decision. Maybe they could butter me up by picking the answer that I maybe want, but that's not going to be what I'm going to choose on. It's going to be choose on the overall quality of your debate. And up first, our first question is going to be, who is the third best goalie in the NHL right now besides Hellebuck and Shesterkin? Up first, Max, what is your opening statement for your third best goalie in the NHL as of right now?
All right. Third best goalie in the NHL is Thatcher Demko. I think Thatcher Demko is, to a lot of people, may not be the third best goaltender because there's other names that usually come to people's head. But Demko has been carrying the Canucks a lot more than some of the other goaltenders potentially have. And he had one poor season. And a lot of that was due to injuries, slow start from the Canucks. But aside from that, he's been a very consistent top 5 goaltender in the NHL. Last season, one of his best. He was second in the league in goals saved above expected. He's been a solid .915 and up save percentage guy. Injuries do hold him back for sure, but when he is healthy, he is one of the most consistent, calm, and skilled goaltenders in the crease.
Okay, solid opening statement. Nordic, over to you. Who are you picking?
Well, I think you got to look in terms of consistency. You need to look at goalies who have put up, consistent. I don't like to look at win numbers. I like to look at save percentage and kind of goals against is my best analytics to look at. And if you're consistent in that, for I would say at least 2 or 3 seasons, I think you are all in all a very solid goaltender, and that is why Hellebuck and Shesterkin are 1 and 2. But I have Sergei Bobrovsky at number 3. And Bob, listen, you look over the course of his entire career, he has only had one season where he's had a save percentage below a 9.05, which is, or I think 2 seasons below 0.905, which is a pretty impressive stat. And ever since he's gotten to Florida, he has been very consistent, putting at least above a 0.9010. A few seasons in there, like in 22-23, he was a little bit lower. But even then, you look at the playoffs, and that guy carried them to the final last year. He, even though looked a little bit on and off in the finals, he did backstop them in Game 7 to the win. He's put up consistent .915s, .913s, .906s throughout his time in Florida. And he also has, I think, 2 Vezinas. And you even look back at his time with Columbus, he's been, he put up .931s and .921s. He was a very consistent goalie throughout almost his entire career. I actually thought about Demko. I thought Demko was a pretty good pick, but I'm going with Bob.
Yeah. We got to hurry up these opening statements and get to war. But Marcus, who is your pick?
Well,
I love it though.
When you take Hellebuck and Shesterkin off the board, there's only one other name that I thought of, and it's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion and a one-time Selke guy and 2-time All-Star 2020-21 Conn Smythe winner, Andrei Vasilevsky. I mean, his numbers throughout his career, I'm literally looking at them. He hasn't had a year under 900 save percentage. He's the best, in my opinion, one of the best goaltenders of our generation. The dude has had, like, look at this, 44 wins, 39 wins, 35 wins, 31 wins, 39 wins in like a 5-year stretch. The guy knows how to win. He knows how to stop pucks in big games. I mean, I only got 30 seconds. That's what I got to say.
All right. Anybody want to go first and maybe take some shots at the other guy?
I mean, they're all good cases from all of you guys.
Well,
You know
first
what I mean?
off, Max, like, I mean, how can you pick? I respect your pick, first off, but how can you take
Likewise.
somebody like Demko who hasn't played at all this year?
That's a good point.
It is a good point.
You don't
I
know
think
what he looks
we're
like.
early enough in the year where I don't know if it is enough to degrade saying that he's not top 3, but going purely off of skill, and if he were to step onto the Canucks like immediately right now, obviously that's an if scenario, the Canucks become a Stanley Cup contender in my eyes. I think they're enough of a team, and with Demko, I think he's that good that if he's healthy in the playoff run, I think he is a Stanley Cup contender. And even last season, I think what held the Canucks back and eventually cost them, and when they were eliminated in the playoffs, was because they didn't have Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good input. Now, Marcus, my thing with you, I know I'm kind of taking shots at everyone
I
here.
love it. I love it.
He's picking.
Marcus, Vazzy has been struggling the last couple of seasons. For his standard, he's put up, what, a .900 in 23-24 and a .903 so far this season.
That
Has
is
been kind of
true.
on and off. What do you have to say about that?
Well, to be honest with you, Tampa has lost quite the amount of, should I say, defensive key pieces. You know, Sergachev went
Yeah.
to Utah. McDonough, I think he's back, but they did lose him to Nashville for a few years. So I guess you could say that kind of maybe, derailed his numbers a bit, but we see that with goaltenders all the time. And even then, like this year, goaltenders are having like really hard starts. So yeah, when I look at that, I look at goaltenders and I evaluate them based on the defensive game. You know what I mean? Like, how good is the defensive part of them? I feel like that is sort of half the battle with me. I don't know about you, but that's the way I see it. But Vasilevsky in general, though, he's still, he carries a lot of the load. And even then in those Stanley Cup runs, I just can't help but think about how much he not only beat up the Bruins in the crease, but just how good he was in those 2020 and 2021 runs. Like,
Well, I got to be honest with you. When you look in terms of Bobrovsky, I mean, Bob has played in front of way worser decors throughout his entire career. Not really recently with Florida. I guess I can give you that. But I mean, like with Columbus, he had Bartner's favorite guy, Werenski. But like apart from that, like it's a pretty weak blue line in front of him, and he still put up great numbers. So
not in 2019 though. In 2019, that was a stacked Columbus team.
Let's
Okay.
They had some dogs on
let's try
that
to focus
squad.
more so on recently.
Yeah,
Okay.
recently.
5 years ago. Anybody want to take a shot on?
I mean, if we want to
cooking
talk
right now.
recently,
He's going at
He
you
is
guys. Maybe want to take a
if
shot
you
on
want to talk
Bobrovsky?
recently, the Bobrovsky is below 900 save percentage. I know, of course, Evan's argument against me is Demko has 0 games played this season, but we've seen Bobrovsky, and he's a below 900 save percentage this season. You mentioned Bobrovsky at times has been close to a 901, 905 save percentage throughout his career, which is a detriment, I think. He's so up and down. You don't know what Sergei Bobrovsky you're going to get. We've even seen in the playoffs, one game he could be very solid, and another game he could be very elite. I would argue he benefited more from the Florida Panthers being such an extremely deep team last playoff run, and that's why the Panthers went far compared to Bobrovsky carrying them. Bobrovsky wasn't even the best goaltender in the playoffs last season. I would argue that was Jeremy Swayman.
Well, he beat yours, Jeremy Swayman, so
That's fair. That's fair.
I mean,
Yeah,
with the low save percentage thing, it is. I will give you that, but it's a little early for me. He's only played 9 games. Give it a little bit more time before I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think he might be struggling to start the year, but the Panthers are still winning games, and he's also faced lesser shots than he has in previous years.
Sure.
I mean, like obviously it's only 9 games, but like he has a very good. Like I mean, I feel like the defense has played well so far in front of him, and the offense has looked good, which kind of contradicts my other point. So
the defense has played pretty well in front of Bobrovsky, but he does have a negative goal saved above expected. So to start the year, like you said, it is early, but to start the year, he has been allowing more goals than he probably should be allowing.
Okay. I think I'm ready to make my deliberations. I think Marcus is definitely out of it. He focused way too much on 2020 and 2021 prior years' success. When you look at Vasilevsky recently, I'm not trying to make my bias, but I just feel like he focused too much on that. Comes down to Demko and Bobrovsky, and I think Nordic may have made the best argument in terms of not only attacking the other candidates, but also defending his other guy, focusing on the last 16 months where he has been so good. So I'm going to give that to Nordic, but very, very good debate on both sides. It is Nordic. He only needs
Max
one more
debated
point.
well.
He only
Max
needs one more.
points.
Yep. What?
I said Max made a pretty good point.
Yeah, that was a good first one.
was
So
fun.
next up, we got who do we got going first? We got Nordic going first, then we got Marcus second in terms of picking their topic, and then Max third. Among the 4 Atlantic teams I'm about to name, who has the best future? Montreal, Detroit, Ottawa, or Buffalo? It feels like these teams have been rebuilding. Well, not really Montreal because 2021, but the other 3 forever it seems. So Nordic, you're up 1-0 and you have the first pick right now. You played your hand pretty good. I know you lost that intentionally on the draw, but which of those 4 teams do you think? What's your first pick going to be?
I'm rolling with Ottawa. I mean, I just think that
No,
they have.
wait. First, just like they're gonna pick theirs.
Oh,
Yeah, and then Marcus, who would be your pick be? And then you'll do your opening.
My pick for the 4 Atlantic teams,
Yeah.
Montreal.
And then Max?
I was also going to go with Montreal.
Yeah, pick someone else.
I'll go with Detroit.
Okay. Nordic up first.
all right. Well, sorry, Bartner, for interrupting you. First off,
No. It's all, I should have laid that
I'm
out.
ready to just go. I'm kicking.
You got fucking hunger in your eyes. I love it.
With Ottawa, for me, they have everything. They have a pretty good blue line back there. I actually like the ad of Jensen. He looks good so far. Olmark in the back end. Forsberg even looks good as the backup right now, too. They have the very good top 9, Kachuk, Stutzla, Norris, Pinto. Need I say more? The ads of Perron, Amadio all look very good. I'm a little doubtful about Travis Green, but I really do think that he can mentor those guys. And I mean, we'll have to see how November goes. And if we're talking in terms, we're talking in terms of the future. So I would say definitely Ottawa right now.
Okay.
I was thinking about this
Marcus,
season.
what's your opening statement?
So with Montreal, I really look at the future down the road. They're scary for me. You know, Martin St. Louis, for one thing, I think is a good coach, and he helped bring out the scoring again in Cole Caulfield, having Suzuki center that, and even I look at Yaroslav Slavkovsky, I like him as a power forward. I look at the back end down the road, Lane Hudson, David Reinbacher. They got some good young studs in that blue line, and even then the biggest X factor for me is Jacob Fowler out of Boston College. I've been witnessing him a lot. He's an All-American first team last year, Hockey East champion, national champion, runner-up, one-time U20 gold medalist in the World Juniors. I mean, this guy literally dominated college hockey last year. And even then this year, in 6 games played, he's already got a .943 save percentage, a 134 goals against average. When this guy gets to the NHL, it's going to be a problem for not only the Atlantic, but the whole league when the Canadians are rebuilding.
Okay, then over to Max for Detroit.
Well, the Red Wings are already. I mean, last season they narrowly missed the playoffs, and I think they're close enough, contending wise now. And Marcus did a good job mentioning Montreal's goaltending, but the Red Wings have 2 very scary goaltending prospects of the future, which I like more because if one does become a bust or doesn't succeed as well, you have another great one as well. To also add on that, we saw the Nashville Predators trade a guy like Askarov. That opens up a possibility to trade one of those prospects to build a future on top of that as well. It gives them assets. And beyond that, they have some nice young pieces in there as well that I think are huge for that future.
Okay, very good. Opening statement's gone. Who's ready to take the first shot?
I just love how none of us picked Buffalo because they never
Yeah,
get out of it.
They might just be cursed.
I was gonna say Buffalo because of like their abundance of young talent, but that
Focus on your
direction-
thing, man.
All
Focus on
right,
your
man, my bad. I don't know. I just feel like Montreal down the road, they just got a lot of good young talent that when they figure out those surrounding pieces, it's just gonna be scary for the rest of the league. You know what I mean?
That's my biggest thing with Montreal and not picking them is because they don't have those surrounding pieces just yet. Yes, they have Ivan Demidov. Yes, they have Lane Hudson on the back end. Fowler, we'll see how he is. He looks good in college, but I'm not really sold on them just yet. I think, honestly, you get another top 5 pick this year. I think this team is loaded. Then I think I am sold on them for a better future. But like right now, I just believe Ottawa has everything. And they even have a really good defensive prospect in Yakimchuk coming up, who I doubted, but he actually looks good. So,
Evan, with one thing that does concern me with Ottawa is the goaltending department. Allmark is not necessarily the youngest, so if we're talking in terms of future, I don't necessarily know if I count Allmark as being an advantage. I think the decline is more so starting, lesser the increase in value for Allmark.
Yeah, not to pile it on the Allmark stuff, but they're also giving him that much money for. I mean, yeah, it's only 4 years, but like they are giving him like a substantial amount for it.
Look at the Bruins fans ganging up on me right now. What is happening?
You gotta fight back. You gotta fight
So,
back.
I will say, yes, that is a good point with the goaltending, but I feel like this team will be able to find a solution to that. I think Stamkos has made a lot of good moves so far, even with getting Omar. Omar might not be a long-term solution, and I do agree with you. Maybe he may be on the declining side, and giving him that money for 4 years. I can totally see that, but yeah, I think that they'll be able to figure that out when that time comes. But at least as of right now, I think they're okay. But again, this is future, so yeah, you guys got a good point.
Yeah.
True that. Even then with Ottawa, sometimes I've always looked at their like bottom 6, and I've been like, that is something that I feel like they've needed to address for a while, and why they haven't really been able to get to the hump of the wild card. You know what I mean? Like I remember they brought in Claude Giroux, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a good move, but I was like, where's the bottom? You know what I mean? I've never really seen that out of them. They kind of got a bunch. I don't want to be like Flight Reacts, but a bunch of nobodies, if you will. I just don't really see it out of them in that aspect. And I know that if you want to be a good hockey team in this league, you got to have a bunch of somebodies on that bottom 6.
Yeah,
So,
that's fair, but like we're talking future. Like
that's
if
true.
we want,
Yeah. So
if we
future
want to talk,
wise,
if we want to talk right now, I would say Montreal's bottom 6 is pretty horrendous. I would
oh
say
yeah, no, that's for sure.
Detroit's bottom 6 is not great right now, but I think we're talking future, and I think Ottawa will be okay in the future when it comes to that. They have a lot of really good top end talent. The depth will come whether it's free agency acquisitions or trade deadline, but I think their bottom 6 isn't bad.
True.
Just a lot of guys that, yeah.
To defend, my pick, the Red Wings, I don't think any one of the other 3 teams in this conversation has the defensive prospect depth that the Red Wings have. I already touched on their goaltending, but I think defensively they are very, very set for the future. And we've already kind of gotten a taste of them. Mo Seider has been, struggling, but that's a conversation for a bigger workload. I think skill-wise and potential-wise, his ceiling is still very high. And once he gets some of the help from guys like ASP, guys like Edvinson, when he starts to grow, that's going to greatly benefit that decor. And like I said, you got the 2 goaltending prospects in the system that are going to make that defensive structure that much stronger. All you need is to add maybe a couple more dynamic, skilled forwards that you can get later in the draft. And I think the Red Wings are set. Defense wins championships.
A lot of what ifs there, though. A lot of what ifs if Pellica can pan out. I see your point, and I actually do kind of agree with you because they do have a really good defensive pool, but it's a lot of what ifs right now, and you can say that
there's
for a
what
lot of
ifs in
teams,
anything when you're talking about future. There could be a
Yeah.
7th rounder that comes out of nowhere and steals the show. But going off of what we have so far, knowing these players, like that defense core, they have almost an entire position basically locked up prospect wise, and they all look good. They all look very good.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other comments, critiques on these other teams you guys got?
Nah, Atlantic's loaded with some young talent down
They're
there.
all, they all have very good futures. Like, I mean, it's
Just depends on how they work it, if you
we
will.
could go on here for forever, but all 4 of them have very good futures.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say any of these teams are shit. I think I'm thinking through. There is a problem. I don't think you guys hammered enough about how bad Ottawa's prospect pool is, but I think I'm still going to give this to Max. I think he did a really good job talking about the goaltending prospects, the defenseman prospects, the fact that right now those are weaknesses, but they do have clear options. Marcus, I just didn't really hear enough on like their overall prospect pool outside of really Jacob Fowler. You didn't focus on Demidov being that future franchise superstar.
Fair.
Michael Hage is looking good at that level. Nordic, you did a good job definitely talking about like the now, but they did kind of cook you on the Olmark stuff a little bit. The fact he has been a bit disappointing. So I'm going to go with Max on that one. Maybe I'll beat the Red Wings hater allegations with that one. I pick the Red Wings, but we got a 1-1 tie between Nordic and Max. Marcus is fighting for his life. Next up, besides the Florida Panthers, who I think we can probably agree like are the Cup favorites right now, considering they're looking good and they won the Cup last year. Which team is most likely to win the Stanley Cup right now besides Florida? Marcus, Max, then Nordic. First, just give the names.
I would say a team that has not only been doing really well this year, has been doing well over the past couple of years. The Carolina Hurricanes, for me, are that playoff hockey team that I want to avoid. Rod the Bod not only keeps himself in shape, but his team in shape. He always preaches a disciplined playoff hockey game. Martin H is absolutely on a heater, not to mention they've kept a good core offensively for the past couple of years, and even then on their back end. They got a good mix of offense and defense. You know, I look at guys like Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov. Yeah, they're up for renegotiation, but they're still great guys to have. Biggest question for me, though, can their goaltending be healthy? I like Peter Kochetkov, but can Frederick Anderson stay healthy? I think he's a good goaltender, but can he stay healthy enough to maybe push them over the hump?
Yeah.
So aside from that, I like the Canes.
Yeah, I like how you like critique and argue. You got me fully on board with it. But next up, Max, who you got as your Cup pick? You can't give these critiques like these cracks in your arguments, then they're gonna jump on it.
Oh, not bad.
Unlike Marcus, my team has succeeded in the playoffs as of late and is still a very good team. My pick is the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they are, it sounds like the basic pick. They just won the Stanley Cup, but they are still a very dominant team. They have all the pieces. They've proven they know how to win. And Mark Stone, knock on wood, is healthy right now. So they're my pick.
Okay, pretty
I
straightforward.
like that Vegas pick. I like that Vegas pick. That's all I'll say. But I'm rolling with Dallas in my opinion. I think Dallas, kind of like Vegas, they've been there the last few seasons, have that experience, and I just think that overall, you guys are going to slam me on that blue line. They're very young, and they still have the old veteran pieces that put them together. And I think they have a very competent goalie and Ottinger in net. And I think that it's a matter of time before they get over that hump. And I'm going with the Stars.
Okay, let's debate. What's one of you guys' biggest critiques over some of these picks?
I mean, Evan kind of brought it up. Dallas Stars, especially
Yeah.
the right side of the defense, is weak. It's of course something that you can add on, but it's definitely something that when you're potentially going to play teams like the Edmonton Oilers, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Colorado Avalanche, who have dynamic offenses, that defense does scare me. It is a worrisome, and I think it will hold the Dallas Stars back. And I think that's probably their biggest detriment right now, and something they needed to address in the offseason. Didn't do a good enough job of doing it.
Yeah, I will agree with that. And again, that's why I said it. You guys are going to slam me on it. But I think that it is something that you can add on the trade deadline. And I think that overall, this team still has a very good offensive core besides that. And I think that, outscoring your problems may be pretty difficult, but they do have a really good goalie in net. Apart from that, my critique with like Vegas is just kind of the winger depth is a concern for me. And I'm still not sold on that goalie tandem. Even though they do look solid to start this season, I'm not sold on them just yet.
For sure. And I would counter that by saying that when Vegas just won the Cup a couple years ago, like they very recently won the Cup, they didn't need super all-star elite goaltending. They were very average. Aiden Hill was nothing special. He just had to be an average goaltender, and the team was able to do the rest. They don't need an Igor Shesterkin or Connor Hellebuck to carry them to the finals.
I don't know if this team is built deep enough for them to be able to sustain something like that. I know they do have a solid defensive core, but I don't know if they're deep enough at this point. Like 2 years, it was 2 years ago at this point, 2 years when we get to the playoffs, but to that point, they had a very deep team offensively. I know the blue line is still solid, but I just don't know if they have a team deep enough to do that. And with Carolina, for me, my biggest critique with them is they just lost so much. And I think those guys, like, they do look good to start this year. I will say that. But I think with the guys that they brought in, it may take them a little bit to kind of, get developed and get used to each other, because you have a few new young players in there and then a few other guys that, made me question a little bit. They still have a very good defensive core, but that forward core and that forward depth I'm not sold on entirely.
Yeah, but the thing is about Carolina's forward depth, I feel like you could say the same thing with even Dallas or maybe even Vegas, is that they have a few young guys that, maybe aren't used to it. Like I look at
Jackson Blake.
Vegas, not to go back to Max, but they brought in like Victor Olofsson, I think, and they also have Brendan Bryson from Michigan, who's been seasoning up in the AHL. And then you look at Dallas. I'm not even going to try and say Wyatt Johnson isn't good. That dude is a stud. But you look at them like, can Logan Stankovic's good too, but like, is he going to translate this into the playoffs? I look at that and I'm like, is he going to do that? That's the question with all these young guys. Even then, Maverick Bourque, can he do that too? So, we've already touched on Dallas's defense and we've touched on Vegas's depth, but you could say, yes, Carolina has lost some talent, but then again, like, they still have a good solid core and a great coach who can develop these guys, I think. I like Jackson Blake. Even want to see Bradley Nadeau up there at one point this year. So,
Marcus, do you have any concerns about going against the New York Rangers again in the playoffs after not having a ton of success? How do you think they're going to solve that? I'll ask the same to the rest of you guys.
well, the thing is I think that's a great matchup between both. I mean, New York even has a lot of great, players depth wise. They got that Victor Mancini kid. He's been scoring, or is it Mancini? I don't even know. Shesterkin's cooking per usual. He wants that contract, and even then on his back, he's got Jonathan Quick. Do I think Carolina could outbeat New York? Yeah, but I think it's more of a strategy thing than anything. Both teams have a lot of talent, but I think Rod the Bod's one of the better coaches in the league.
What about you, Nordic? Edmonton Oilers kind of took their lunch money the final like 4 games of that series.
Yeah, but I think that if you can shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, I think you win that series. That was their biggest problem, I would say. So I think that you can win that series.
Yeah, and then Max, Dallas Stars, Nordic's team. How would you get over them?
They did.
Well, the Vegas Golden Knights added a ton.
Never mind. I'm thinking 2023.
The Vegas Golden Knights added a ton last trade deadline. I think it's something you can't track with stats, but there's definitely a chemistry factor. They didn't have a chance to kind of build that chemistry. All of a sudden, we're thrown into the playoffs. They're going to have a whole 82-game season if everyone stays healthy to get that chemistry, get familiar with playing with each other, which I think will make them a stronger team come the playoffs. And they'll still probably pull a Vegas and get another big star at the trade deadline this year because they do that every year. But also to bring in statistics of this season for the Golden Knights, they have a combination that not a lot of teams have, and that is very strong 5v5 and specialty teams play. They're currently have scored the most goals at 5v5 and still have the third best power play in the league. That's something that is rare. Usually it's one or the other, especially this early on in the season. And they have a pretty decent penalty kill as well. I think that's enough to carry them on. They're gelling right now, and I think it'll carry them into the playoffs too.
I'm ready to make my choice, and not to be recency biased, but yeah, I think that Max final point with like Hannafin and Hurdle having a full season. Hurdle played like 5 games total in the regular season for Vegas last year. I think I'm going to give it to him on that one. I think he did a good job attacking Dallas's defense as well. So Max 2, Nordic 1, Marcus 0 as of right now. As we enter the final question, Marcus, it's all on the line here. Who is the third greatest player in NHL history after Gretzky? We go Max first, then Nordic, then Marcus, I believe.
If we're doing it by like the point system, yes.
Yeah. Well, no. I'm saying
the original numbers.
Yeah, we're back to the original. Or Max.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Marcus picking last needs to get this point. The pressure's on.
Max.
We'll just. I actually like what Marcus did with the just go right into your opening statement. We don't have to say it first. So like, just say who you're going with, and then just like say your opening statement.
Okay. Call me biased. Third best player in NHL history is Bobby Orr. Greatest defenseman in NHL history. Paved the way for every other defenseman to ever be successful. Nick Lidstrom, Cale Makar today is because of Bobby Orr. Nobody will ever be able to replicate what he did. He's the third best player of all time.
Okay. Straight and direct. Nordic, over to you.
Give me, and this is going to make all the Flyers fans mad at me because I'm a big Flyers fan, but I'm going with Sidney Crosby.
Modern pick.
Going with Crosby. Might be a little bit of recency bias because again, I wasn't alive for Gordie Howe. I wasn't alive for all these people.
I
I'm
don't think
literally
any of us
I'm, I'm the youngest kid. I'm the youngest guy here.
Yeah, Bobby Orr back in my day was electric.
Yeah, of course. But
Might be.
for me, Crosby, I mean, he is the only player in this era to put up 1,600 points. I think Ovechkin might be close behind him, but I know Crosby is still playing at a generational level to his age. He's only 2 goals away from 600 essentially, and even at his age, at 37 years old, is still having a very impressive year. Has 15 points for the first 14 games so far. And even before that, has been a very consistent 90-point scorer, just apart from a few seasons in there in like 21, 22 and those shortened seasons. But overall, he's been very consistent over his entire career, has carried players behind his back. 3-time Stanley Cup champion, has the longevity. I'm going with Crosby.
And then we're swinging it over to Marcus.
Well, Max took the one guy who I would agree is the third best player in the NHL history. So might as well mention the other guy who he said in there. Nicholas Lidstrom, I think, is definitely up there as one of the better players of all time. Hall of Famer, 4-time Stanley Cup winner, 7-time Norris winner, won 3 back-to-backs, a 2001 Conn Smythe guy. I mean, the awards just precede his reputation. I would take this guy to start my franchise as a defenseman. I've loved watching him early on in my NHL days, like growing up. I really wanted to take Bobby Orr, but it is what it is. Nicholas Lidstrom's also a great defenseman.
Okay, start making cracks in the argument. Again, this is greatest. I'm not going to hear that Bobby Orr wouldn't be able to play in today's era. It's greatest. It's dominating your era. I think you guys all agree on that. But yeah, start taking your shots, Marcus. Start cooking.
I can't take shots at either of those two takes. I'm sorry. They're both amazing. There's nothing I can say about either of those guys.
Waving the white flag, basically.
Well, instead
All
of
right, Max and Nordic for the final fight.
I mean, I'm gonna
Get
kind of
home to get
I'm
the
gonna kind
first
of agree with
choice.
Marcus that it's really hard to degrade the careers of Nick Lidstrom
Yeah.
and Sidney Crosby, but who else has a career like Bobby Orr? I mean, the guy has 8 Norrises, 2 Cup winners. I mean, he's won 2 Conn Smythes with that. He's a 3-time Hart winner as a defenseman. Like, the guy in such a short career completely dominated the league. And like I said too, he also has an influence on the game of hockey. To be one of the greatest of all time, you have to influence a new game of hockey. And Bobby Orr has done that. Nick Lidstrom is Nick Lidstrom because of Bobby Orr. Cale Makar today is Cale Makar because of Bobby Orr. No defenseman has his accolades, and no one ever will.
Okay. Nordic, over to you.
Just my only gripe with Orr is that just like, I guess, the longevity, but it only makes it even more impressive with what he's done. I would say with Crosby, I mean, you could say, I would argue for some points in Crosby's career he's had some pretty bad line mates amongst him. Yes, he's had Malkin, but Malkin hasn't been on his line. And with Crosby, he's played along guys like Pascal Dupuis and like Nick Bonino and like all these randos throughout his entire career, and still had a very consistent career through it all. I think if not for injuries, I think we might be talking about Crosby maybe even having like 2,000 points, which is a very rare comedy that no other player has done besides what, Gretzky? McDavid might do it, but that's a talk for another time.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're saying injuries potentially could derail, Bobby Orr's career was ended, like, I believe 10 seasons in because of injuries. He was so limited because of the amount of games he played, and still had an insane career. Imagine he finished with less than 700 games. Imagine he just gets that number to 1,000, 1,100, which in today's is just, that's average for a player who was good for a long period of time, can get 1,000, 1,100 games. So if Bobby Orr was able to play that amount of time, so if we're using the what if of Crosby, you could also use it on Bobby Orr.
Yeah. It seems like this is a prime versus longevity debate, mainly in part because Crosby's prime was ruined by injuries. So explain to me why, Max, you just did a good job. So I'll go to Rick first. Why is the longevity of Crosby over 20 years more impressive than what Orr did as a defenseman in such a short period of time?
Well, I just think it's all about consistency. Orr had like from I'm looking at, I have his stats pulled up right now, but he had like 100-point year from for like 5 years in there, but Crosby's been a consistent 90, almost 100-point player through his entire career. That's the biggest thing. Or had some seasons in there where, again, he did have deal with some injuries and had some problems in there. But when Crosby came into the NHL right from the gate, he was incredible. And again, like had 100-point seasons in 3 of his first 4 seasons. And it took Orr a little bit to kind of get to that point in the NHL. So kind of where I see it, I guess.
And then Max, final little statements on you about the prime being more impressive than maybe the longevity.
Yeah, obviously it would be nice to have a player that's able to play 20 years consistently. That is a huge point. But having a player that is so dominant for a window allows a team to commit fully for a window. Obviously, the Bruins didn't know that Orr's career was going to be cut short, but they were able to supplement Bobby Orr with guys like Phil Esposito, guys like Jared Cheevers that were able to get the Bruins to winning 2 cups during Orr's time. In such a short time, they were able to dominate, and then they didn't win again until the 2000s. His dominance was so profound in that time that it made the Bruins relevant, essentially.
Yeah, okay. I think I am going to lean with Max on this one, just because Nordic, I feel like you could have done a better job talking about how Crosby, although he was injured during the time, was putting up like 130-point pace in his prime, even back in the early 2010s. I think you could have done a better job hammering that home. So it's 3-1. They both advance to the final round because Marcus basically waved the white flag. But now we're going to go to a best of 3. We're going to wipe the scoreboards. It's now 0-0. Whoever wins the next 2 out of the 3 wins it. Marcus, thank you for your service. Maybe I should make you, maybe in the future episodes of this, whoever gets eliminated should be a co-judge. But for this one, we're just going to do me. And the first question is, we're going to do a little bit shorter here, probably only like 3 to 4 minutes. What is the worst contract in the NHL right now? Total contract, not just this season's cap hit. And because Max won the first round, I guess, of this, he's going to get to go first. I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
So Max, worst contract in the NHL.
Worst contract in the NHL? It's Darnell Nurse. Are we making opening statements too?
Yeah, just roll through it.
Darnell Nurse's contract pretty much just started. He's making nearly $10 million and was horrendous for pretty much the entire playoff run. In a playoff run, the Oilers are paying him as a number 1 defenseman, and he performed as like a 6th pair defenseman. He was very bad. It's costing the Oilers potential to add elsewhere on their team. It's still got like 6 years left on that deal.
Okay, solid. Nordic, over to you.
Going with a little bit of an obvious one. I'm going with, ironically, we're doing like Edmonton versus Calgary here, which is kind of funny, but I'm rolling with Jonathan Huberdeau. I think he's on a $10.5 million deal for the next, I think, 6 seasons at this point. Huberdeau, yes, he started off this year solid, but after coming off of a 115-point year from Florida, gets signed to that deal, which he essentially forced Brad Treliving to do. He had the largest drop-off in points of any player ever. Went from 115 to 55. Went the entire month of December last season without even scoring a single point. Getting paid that amount of money. Was also a minus 29 last year, even though he has, yes, been like a consistent 50-point scorer. I'm rolling with Jonathan Huberdeau because 50-point score does not equal $10.5 million.
Yep. I think I could be wrong, but actually I'm pretty sure I'm right. Huberdeau has, including this year, 7 years. Nurse has 6 years, including this year. So right. Huberdeau does have 1 more year. I just want to get that out. But all right, feel free to duke it out now.
I think they're both shit. They're both horrible.
Yeah, we can definitely agree on that.
I mean, that's not what I'll start with, at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, for Darnell Nurse, I think his negativity is hurting a potential cup winner. Huberdeau right now is definitely hurting, but the Flames are in not as predominant of a position. So contract-wise, they're still very bad, for sure. But how much it's hurting the team, because they're both bad contracts, you have to look elsewhere as how's it affecting their team. It's affecting the Calgary Flames, but it's affecting the Oilers potentially at winning the Stanley Cup. Wasting the years of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, while Draisaitl was on a relatively cheap deal that is not going to be cheap anymore. That money that's going to Darnell Nurse could have been going to somewhere else that would have made them a much stronger team.
I could see that, but yeah, I honestly, yeah, I honestly agree with you. I think that, well, I still believe that Huberto is worse, but we're looking at two completely different teams here. The Oilers are a Stanley Cup contender, and Huberto is on what is a rebuilding team. But you could argue that a big part of why they're rebuilding is because they paid Huberto so much money, and he's just been so absolutely awful. At least with the Oilers, Nurse has good defensive partners around him that can sometimes make up for those mistakes sometimes.
Right.
I
But
know
if
he's
you
not
have,
with like Bouchard or Ekholm, but
yeah, but if you have to supplement a guy who's making $9.5 million with other players, that's probably not a good. It's not a good deal. It's not a
Yeah.
ideal situation there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep highlighting that horrendous playoff run when the stakes mattered the most. It was constantly Darnell Nurse. His breakouts were terrible. He was constantly turning the puck over. He wasn't playing like a $4 million defenseman, never mind an almost $10 million one.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm going to give that one to Max because he just really did hammer home how much it affected the team. I think Nordic made it pretty close when he mentioned that, like, that contract arguably set Calgary into the rebuild. It wasn't intention, like, he wasn't with the intent. They were trying to be a contending team, but yeah, I think with him just hammering that home, got to give it to Max. Next up, Nordic has first pick here. Who is the best cup runner-up of the last 20 years?
This is a really good. We're looking at the last 20 years, so it's a lot of Stanley Cup winners. I'm actually gonna go really recency bias. I'm gonna roll with the Oilers from last season. I think that even though we just said about Darnell Nurse, I think that this team had a really good forward core. They had all four lines were rolling essentially in the playoffs, even though they do have kind of like an average goalie in net. I think that's still you still have a really good player in Bouchard, who I think put up like the most points as a defenseman ever in a single playoff run. And also had Ekholm alongside him too. And even too, like Broberg also looked good when he was with them at the time. They had really great depth, great penalty kill that killed off like 20 straight power plays, right? It was something along those lines. I think that we're looking over the course of 20 years, so I'm sure Max probably could find someone that's probably better than me. But right now, for recency bias, I'm gonna go with the Oilers, and that's because I haven't watched a lot of hockey. These guys have watched hockey a lot longer than I have. So
Okay, Max, over to you.
I mean, I'm going with a fairly recent one too. I was debating between two different teams, but the one I'm going to go with is the 2022 Tampa Bay Lightning. Main argument is they had just won back-to-back Stanley Cups the year before, and then this year they went back to the Stanley Cup final and still had a 51-game season that year. Stamkos was put up 100 points. Kucherov, I think, was at like 120-point pace that season and was over point per game in the playoffs. They already proved that they could win. You could use, the argument of the COVID bubble, but they still legitimately won a Stanley Cup in back-to-back seasons and then made it again to the finals. True dynasty. Yeah.
Okay. What's Nordic? Any marks?
None of you chose the 2010-11 Vancouver Canucks.
That was my second team.
I thought you were going to go with the Bruins in 2013.
Sorry, Daniel Sedin won the Art Ross Pearson All-Star game and was second in Hart voting. Henrik Sedin was also in the All-Star game and was 10th in Harding. Ryan Kessler
was made in the first round, and you could have picked the 2011 Canucks.
Next, Ryan Kessler was 8th in the Hart voting, and he won the Selkie. Schneerhoff was 8th in the North.
All right, back on track. Back on track. Order. Nordic.
He just walked.
He's
leaving.
What would the critiques be of the 2022 Tampa Bay Lightning?
My biggest.
The Oilers do better.
Oh, what'd you say?
Yeah. So, what do you think the Oilers do? How do you think the Oilers are better than them?
I would say that Tampa pretty much in that. Yes, they were back-to-back Stanley Cup champions before. I will give Max all the credit there, but I feel like Tampa lost a lot of depth in those 2 years prior. Lost a lot of guys in free agency. Like what? They lost that. They lost that whole like third line, like Blake Coleman, Andre Palat, and Yanni Gord. They lost that whole really good third line. That was a big part of why they won those cups. And I feel like against Colorado, it really was never that close. Colorado went up like 2-0, I think, in the first two games. Tampa took game 3, Colorado took game 4, and then it was pretty much just lights out from there. Vazzy, I thought, did play well. But again, I guess you could make the argument for the Oilers. They were down 3-0, but they ended up coming back and only lost by a goal in Game 7?
2-1, I believe. Yep.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about two very good teams. I mean, like, it's
Of course.
props. So, but yeah, I think that for that reason, I just feel like Edmonton was more deeper. You could look at the defensive core and say, sure, I would say Tampa did have a better D core and definitely a better goalie, but I feel like Edmonton was the better team overall in the finals against Florida.
Okay, Max, how would you retort that?
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. The Oilers were put up a good fight, but you also said they were one game away from being swept in the Stanley Cup Finals. I do think having maybe a year away from, but still prime Andrei Vasilevsky, he put up a .922 in those playoffs. He was still very much an elite goaltender. And Nikita Kucherov probably was on his way to win the Conn Smythe. Like you said, they weren't in it as much against the Colorado Avalanche, but that could also be a case of a burnout of sorts, having just been to back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals, making it to a third one. I still think their roster-wise, they, if put up against the Edmonton Oilers of last year, would have beat the Oilers. I think they were a strong enough team, even with losing that third line. I think Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky, and Kucherov and Stamkos still being elite still would have. Andre Palat was very good. I think he was almost point per game in those playoffs too. That Tampa team was still very, very good.
No, I agree. They're both very good teams. I think you did hit it home with that point that if you put them against each other, Tampa probably does win. So you do have a good point there.
Also, in the last three games of that series against the Avalanche, they were all 1-goal games, including Game 4, I believe, was an overtime loss. That could have flipped the script immediately and would have tied the series, I believe. And Game 6 that they lost was 2-1 as well. Vasilevsky kept them in it. Maybe that third line did end up costing them that series, but they were very much in that. They never found themselves in a hole where you almost got swept embarrassingly in your first Stanley Cup final since 06.
Yeah, 06. I still think though, like when they made that comeback, it wasn't really close. I think Edmonton pretty much dominated in every single game, apart from, I would say, Game 5, even though Game 7 was close. I do agree with you. Like, you can look at like the series, but then like, you look at the actual games, they were pretty close, decided by only 1 goal. But I just feel that like Edmonton kind of handled Florida very well in the second half of that final, even though they did go down 3-0. So, yeah.
Okay, I think I am ready to decide. And I think I'm going to go with Max for the win overall with this game. When looking at it, I like that he took the third line critique decently good, mentioned some of their other strengths within that forward core, bringing up the fact that although it was a 3-2 series lead and Colorado did go up early, basically every single game was close. And that Colorado team, as he said, was an absolute wagon. So, Max, you are the first winner of Hockey Debates. How are you feeling after this prestigious title that that didn't exist an hour ago?
I would just like to thank all my supporters from day one. This was fun. I had a lot of fun. Yeah, it was really fun debates. You guys had great debates. I had to think a good bit. That was fun. I really enjoyed that. Great topics,
Nordic, how does it feel to be the runner-up?
I mean, I just want to say that if it weren't for Max making all these TikToks that he makes, I wouldn't be a content creator. So, got to give all the credit where it's due to him. Hit him where it hurts.
The OG. Marcus, how does waving the white flag feel on the fourth topic?
This one's gonna sting, boys. I actually had a lot of fun doing this. I love talking hockey, and I love doing it with some of you guys. You guys are absolute beauties. So, This was super fun.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you for taking like an hour 30. We had some technical difficulties before this, but yeah, thank you guys so much for hopping on. Hopefully the followers, subscribers watching this, I hope that you guys really liked it. Let us know in the comments how we can refine this game, because I definitely need some kind of refining and more structure with it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.